Option 2, urban geography. So same idea here. The data's already been provided to you, so go ahead and click on the link. And then from there, the idea is to, similar to activity 2, use the data to help answer the questions. All right, so you'll see a part 1 and a part 2 here. In the part 1 and part 2, just like in the first activity, I kind of helped explain which one to maybe focus in on more. Here, focus in on them equally since they're both 10 points. I think in the first one, what is it? Yeah, one's 7, one's 13, so obviously spend a little bit more time on this second part. All right, so for this first part, describe if your country is urban or rural, and tell me if it's slowly urbanizing, rapidly urbanizing, or not really urbanizing at all. So once again, we can use the data for the world regions to kind of compare. So that, if we see a number, is this a big number? Is this a small number? Come here to see how is this compared to other regions of the world, but also to the world average here is useful. The world average is very useful to compare. All right, so here is the data set that's provided to you. There's a lot of this over here. The easiest, best thing to do is just to go to this drop-down menu here. So keep in mind you've got the world. So if you want to compare your country to the world, the average, let's say, you can do that for this particular option. I'm going to go to Kenya. Start off with Kenya. H-I-J-K-E-N. All right, Kenya. Okay, and so I'm trying to determine whether or not Kenya is 50% urban or in rural or more or less. So if it's more than 50-50, then it's a more urban population. If it's less than 50-50, it's a more rural population. So in 2021, urban population, percent of total population, 28.49%. It's a rural country. And so 28.49% of the population is urban. That means 72% of the population is rural. So this is a great example of a country that is rural. And so you kind of can use that percentage to help answer that question. Further, it has this other part as far as, is it growing? Is it a fast urbanization or is it a slow urbanization? So it's a country in which it doesn't have a large urban population, but it's rapidly urbanizing. And so you can have both of those situations. And that would kind of make sense. If you are overwhelmingly mostly rural, you have a whole lot of opportunity to become urban. So a lot of your percentage of population essentially can move to urban areas. If you're already urban, then there's not much you can grow urban-wise. If you're, like, for example, a country in which 90% of your population is urban, it's hard to urbanize anymore. So your urban population growth wouldn't be as high as a country that's rural like Kenya. And so this 3.71, wait a minute, 3 is a small number. Actually, it's quite high, especially if we go back to this number here. See the rate of urban change. I mean, this 3.1, there's not one world region that's even close to 3.1. So Kenya is outperforming any region in the world in terms of its rate of urbanization. So it's fast urbanization. I'm going to go to a more urban place, and that's our good friend Japan. And so here you'll see exactly what I just said, an urban population, so over 90%. And you can see historically, it's been 91 for a long, long time. So it's not urbanizing much at all. That makes sense. It's already very, very, very urban. The urban population growth, I mean, it's actually de-urbanizing in a way. That's actually because of depopulation. The country of Japan is actually depopulating. There's fewer and fewer people there in the country over time. So it's one of the few places of the world that are currently depopulating. And so that gives me a lot to talk about if you have a country like this. And so if you have a European country, you could see something like this, where maybe if you have a sub-Saharan African country or a South American or Caribbean or Middle American country, you might have more of Kenya's characteristic. All right, and so that's just kind of, okay, being able to explain some basic urban data. This next part is identify and list 3 to 5 largest cities. So that's where you do some research. So you could do that. Okay, what's 5 largest cities in Kenya? We should get a good List of cities in Kenya. Wikipedia is pretty good with this kind of stuff. Oh, of course, it doesn't do by population size. The biggest cities, geo names, sure. Geo name sounds good. 10 largest cities. And so you would just then list those cities, but not the 10 largest. You list the 3 to 5 largest, like it says here. The 3 to 5 largest. And then from there, there's a certain formula to use to determine whether or not a country has a primate city. The primate city is if your if your largest city is more than 2 times larger than the second largest city, then you have a primate city in your country. And the primate city can only be the largest city in your country. Not every country has it. For example, United States, we don't have one because we got New York and LA are kind of close. You get Chicago's not far off. We don't have that one city which is much bigger than all the other cities in the country. Kenya almost, but it does not have a primate city because Nairobi is not more than twice the size of Kakamega or Mombasa, which I'm more familiar with Mombasa. So that's to finish out that part 1 of this one.